podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you can please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. Before we get into the recording for this episode, I just want to make sure that it's not lost, that we send high regards to Dr. Serena Fairfax, her family, her children, Nancy Mateer, her family, and all the folks who care about her. The other folks harmed in these recent weeks that we did not speak to specifically. Yeah, man, this is we felt we needed to make some space in our conversation to touch on this. I hope our beats are in tune. These are impromptu conversations that we hold, so any errors are ours and ours alone. Much love and condolences, respects to all the families and all the people's harmed. And I want to reiterate, if you are a person listening to this or near someone listening to this and you're thinking of hurting yourself or hurting someone else, please call for help. Please reach out. Please call 988. Please reach out to a friend or someone who can come and be with you and be between you and causing harm to someone else. So then we're going to go ahead and go move on. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My man, Justice Rajee.
All right. So, second thing I wanted to add on to you, and so if you listen to this, I'm saying second because we recorded something else first, but to be recording this second, I want to listen to them separately. So in the last 3 weeks, there has been a couple of really high profile murders. I don't have a softer way to say it. Of particularly husbands or former partners, whatever have you, murdering their wives. And then even today, as we were drawing up, there's a situation in Louisiana that I don't know the details about, but the person appears to have killed children, shot multiple partners. I don't know all the details. What in the wake of that, and especially the last one involving the former lieutenant governor of Virginia. And I want to say, on a second, I want to say the sister's name accurately.
Serena
Fairfax. Dr.
Yeah.
Serena Fairfax.
Serena
And also
Fairfax,
a large colleague of mine, sister in Coral Gables. And I want to say, I messed up Nancy's last name. Sorry. Nancy Mateer. She was lieutenant mayor, or deputy mayor, I think is the proper title. But some of my colleagues knew her much closer to me. Those two situations, they're just grotesque. There's I don't have no better way to say that. And what I wanted to try to center or have us engage a little bit about is because then we've had these, particularly with the Virginia situation and Dr. Fairfax's murder. What appeared to be, I didn't hear all the ins and outs of what Roland Martin said. People didn't care for it. But also these posts, people trying to tap into the suicidal nature situation and men's health. But sometimes that conversation becoming an obscuring of the harm caused, right? I've spoken about on here in the past the the specific nature of when men are in distress and the harm and risk they pose to people around them, which is not in anything that I see as like that's just the nature of men. That's just how it is. It's a thing that is a product of our world that we're in right now. We could go to patriarchy. We could go multiple routes, right, on addressing that. And I guess the place I wanted to enter into was as as men in the company of each other. What ways we one are attuned to what may be happening with men around us, who may be our peers, we may feel we know well, right? Um, what ways when these things happen that we the I'll say one couple more things. Some in our human reality, and sometimes even in the attempt to try to be sensitive and reflective, we can start to center our own fears in a situation, um, which is not necessarily something that's what people do. People sometimes can speak first to what they think is most resonating with them. Um, but how do we not turn these into, how do we turn this into, I don't know, maybe turn is not even the right word. How do we engage with this, existing reality around domestic violence, and particularly as it pertains to men being the primary purveyors of such violence, um, in a way, that we don't lose sight of like the present moment, the and what are some of the steps that we can take to be present for others in the moment, right? And then also though be vigilant and like, are we tuned in, right? Are we do we how good are we doing? Again, as I'm gonna say in a peer community of like, man, that's a weird thing he said to me about the situation, right? And do I ask, hey brother, what you mean by that? You know what I mean? If brother says something like, I'm so mad, I can't believe she boo boo boo, and you be like, and you might just let it fly, right? You may not think I need to ask this dude to sit down with me for a minute and say a little more. I guess, yeah, I might be rambling a bit because it's so much to it. We've in offline, we've engaged in these ciphers in some ways over the years that is not necessarily for everybody to be a part of. However, it's a thing that I feel about it. So yeah, I just wanted to get maybe, and also I think it's important. I think we would be missing the mark for who we are to like let this shit pass by without sharing some thoughts on it.
Thank you for framing it like that, Just. My perspective is that it's a challenge because we constantly play this game of back and forth. And I'm saying this to black folks, about black folks. We constantly play this game. We've been playing it since the 80s or 70s, frankly, if you want to go back and read Ebony and Jet, about who is more harmed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And, back then it was a common thing to say black men were the most harmed person in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And black men had lost their jobs and the, post-industrial age. And then we introduced guns and crack were introduced. And then sentences that were unfair for crack and cocaine. So we just had a model. We had a model of like black men are more impacted. And then a lot of research came out to show how black women were being more impacted, right? And it was a unique set of things around toxic patriarchy and racism and gender-based violence and all these kind of things that brought things to bear. And I think we constantly have this back and forth. And I think it played out in this, and I'm gonna say why. And this is my take on it. I think some of the people who responded immediately knew him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they knew her as well.
Right.
right? And I think that is an important part of the context. They knew this man who clearly had fallen from what people thought he was going to be in so many ways. And let's just put it on the table. Because whether you think it was alleged with the sexual abuse, whether you think whatever you want to say across the board with his family, with just like some shit fell apart for homie. Only he had a bad way to go, and it made clearly it was mental and emotional health, right?
Mhm.
And clearly, like it was manifested not just on other people, it was manifested on his family more than anyone else. So I think if you know this man or you've interacted with this man, there's this kind of fall from grace, and there are spaces in our community where a man's fall from grace is like, oh man, it happened again. Damn. And then some people look at that through the lens of that's just y'all always centering men's problems. And I think both are correct. I think both are relevant, I should say. Both are relevant because for those people who knew him, like I wouldn't look at it and be like, damn. I'm like, I'm gonna look at it like a lot of men. What the fuck is going on, homie? Like, you killed your wife, and then killed yourself because you had to leave because you wasn't going to work. Right? Like
Right.
that's how most people outside of not knowing him gonna look at it. Damn, man, what? And,
Right.
and left your children to
Let your
come down
children
and
to
watch.
find that. Like how
Right.
could you?
How could you do that? That's gonna be most people's first perspective. Roland Martin and Wes Bellamy and others were people who knew this man. Again, we can debate how much they knew about his life. And we can also talk about sometime we have to interrogate what does it mean to say we are brothers? And this is where the term brother gets thrown around way too easily.
Mm-hmm.
Because brother is an element of accountability, not just relationship. So people were like, oh, that was my brother. Well, was it your brother? You don't know what the hell was going on, man. Or you turned your eye once you heard about something. Was it your, like, at what point were you complicit? It leads into just broader dysfunction. At what point were you complicit in telling, yo, no more drinks tonight? You know, you get real Vinny Johnson, Joe Dumars, you get real handsy. Right? You start hand checking certain time of the night. People know what that means. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, don't do that. You were not doing that together. Go get some help. So sometime when, especially when people are successful, because guess what? The dude that had these issues in the hood, everyone just goes, no, man, he was tripping.
Yeah.
A black man who was quote unquote successful, we say what happened. But what happened was the same thing that happened with the ne'er-do-well down the street. And so I just think we have to have a conversation how both of those things can be true. How it was absolutely that people had to have a dialogue about having what was his emotional stuff, what was the people who were around him, or maybe the people who were in his fraternity, or the people, you know, just this idea of brotherhood to be able to check to it, and then also not making his life more important because he was lieutenant governor.
Right.
Right. Which again is part of that.
And I think that's a big part of it, right? In that particular context, is that he is perceived as, again, this success, this person who has ascended to a place, and the larger conversation that we would be talking about, particularly the safety of women in our community, doesn't care about that situation, like the nature of his individual experience, right? Because it's the same behavior, whether wildly successful in a way that we would, an external person would know your name, or just, what's the name over there on the West Side, and then one day, something happened, and the people are like, oh man, you heard what happened? What's the name over on 6 on what's the name street? He did what?
Don't put him on 60th Street, but there's
Yeah, I
enough
wasn't gonna put
problems.
him 60. Yeah, I got enough
Don't put him on
problem. I was
60th
trying to put
Street.
him on like a benign
I
sixth
appreciate it, man.
street somewhere in America. You know what I mean?
Sixth Street.
Sixth
Yeah.
Street in this
Big
case, the
West
Sixth
Side.
Street,
No,
Midwest.
not
It could be
outside. Big
anywhere. It
West
could be
Side.
anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Any West Side that exists is not any particular West Side. It is hypothetical conversation,
Big
right?
West Side.
You get to the thing that like I've experienced, and a lot of other people, you know, people may not know from a surface though, right? Like the situation of particularly men when they start to age and experience dementia, how many become violent and unsafe for their partners, right? Like this is a real thing, right? That, you know, if you've never experienced it, whether it was a direct family or a family friend or a friend, you know what I mean? But it's a real phenomenon, right? And in some of these cases, men who, at least from our external lens, may not have been that any type of that situation most of the life we knew them. But when they became mentally unstable as they started to deteriorate with dementia, become wildly violent and dangerous to their partner. We have a lot of stuff here like to be mindful of, and I'm glad you brought on the piece about brotherhood because that something especially in my prior work when I worked with young men and with people every day was the trying to talk about the science of like that's your people, that's your homie, that's your man's, that's whatever. Do you really know him? Right? Is what you're saying about them and their behavior, or your willingness to vouch for them, also somewhat about your own sense of identity and your own sense of code and honor for you? Right. So you'll be like, nah, I mean, he wouldn't do, I would, because that's my man, and do. And that when you find out something that's like, whoa, he did what? Or he may have done what? Or is this what he said? Or that you, instead of interpreting it into an engagement with his behavior, you're like, interpret it through how you see yourself. And it's like, well, I don't want to be associated with that. So I'm going to act like he didn't do it. Right. And the, very rigorous thing that we talked about even as younger men was like, yo, if you go off the rails here, man, like I love you, but I gotta say something to you. I can't let my pride about being embarrassed secondhand for something wrong that somebody who I thought, who I cared about was my buddy, was my man's. And then now that to be something where I don't want to engage with his malfeasance. If such malfeasance exists or, something comes to light. And it's a beat that I don't think I think folks are reluctant to do. I think men are sometimes reluctant to do. I think depending on your orientation and your understanding, either whether it's conscious, subconscious, that there could be like, if you got to go engage with somebody about something that could be, high explosives in terms of what you're saying to them, that you might have to have a fight. Or depending on how they show up in the world, might be gunplay. It might get real interesting, real quick, right? And the value system, whereas when you operate with, well, I still got to go say something. Like I can't not say something because I think it's like, well, he can fight, so we ain't gonna say nothing to him about his behavior in the community, unless we bring the other, like we gotta bring like the bigger Debo with us or something. Like when it's like, nah, if we got to talk about it, we got to talk about it. That may not be an answer for like everybody's situation. And then there's larger systemic things around. Other people are on the internet doing the like all men piece much better than me, and I don't feel like I mean I could. I'll just say it for the beauty, for the benefit of the record. It's like, yeah, until you prove me otherwise, I'm looking at you as a man I don't know. You're not getting the benefit of the doubt. I need to evaluate your character in real time and figure out like, okay, brother, we'll see. But if for most situations, I mean, we used to at different times in life, and we still hold those traditions. Like if we out with in the community or whatever, it's just let's walk the sisters back to their car. You know what I mean? Let's like that's how we was raised, and that was not about some like but the idea was, I mean, it wasn't from an assurity that we would be able to protect if, I don't know, some sort of roving gang of assaulters were driving around.
Right.
But at least we would all be together when
Right.
whatever happened, right? We would not leave our sisters or ourselves, right? Like, it's like, yo, are you good getting over the what's name by yourself? Like, yeah, I'm good. You sure? Yeah, I'm good. All right, man. We're gonna, like, I might get
Right.
2
But you
checks.
got right. Right. Right.
Because
Got to check.
even
Got
for
to check.
you,
That's
I'm
right.
still concerned about your what safety,
Right.
right? So these values, these behaviors, like how do we transmute those, especially again into these spaces where there's not an obvious agreement to share information, right? So I don't know all the ins and outs of your household. I don't know how you talk to your kids when you get home necessarily. I might interpret something, right? If I spend enough time with you, you might hear something. Your kids may be like, yeah, dad always be tripping. Like, what do you say? All right, hold on, let me check out what my nephew talking about, man. What what's the name up the street? If something is said by a young person, if you worked in school, we both worked in schools, education spaces, and a kid sometimes say something, you'd be like, wait, what happened? You'd be like, all right, this ain't like, I might need to check in with that young person to hear what they're experiencing. And it may not be, it may not be something that is requiring some sort of, broad intervention, but it's the reality that people are listening and hearing. And then again, if you're experiencing something untoward, that there is a understanding that it is okay for someone to inquire about your well-being, right? As a baseline, which is not always the case. Yeah.
Can I also share this? You made an interesting point that I wanted to think about again, kind of owing to this idea of who wins the struggle Olympics. And I don't mean to. I know it sounds. It might sound like it being de minimis, but I'm really not. But because it's really about once you have an idea in your head, who's always more harmed. And so for a long time, black men have had an idea that like if something happens to a black man, the system set him up. Because if you spend all this time doing something, what could have gotten you out of that spot? What could have tricked you out your spot? And sometimes it's hard to be like, what tricked you out of the spot was you. Like your mental health and emotional health tricked you out your spot.
Yeah.
Like there was not a conspiracy sent by the Republican Party or centrist Democrats to send a seductress your way by which you got hooked up late night at at a club.
They knew I was going somewhere, so they sent her.
They sent somebody with the red dress on, so I got like Finney Johnson and Joe Dumars. I got like John Sally, and got super hand check, right? A guy was the 89 Pistons out here, right? Playing hard defense. Like, no, you were the foundation of your problems. But for so many of us, we still suffer from that bias. That like it couldn't have been him, and then he'll get himself together. And then we saw, I mean, all research, all the information, he did not get himself together. It got worse for him. It got worse for his family. Right? He tried every trick in the book and lost it and lost it. The other part of this is this when we talk about brotherhood, and I want this to be understood. If you want men to change behavior, yes, society can change, but you need the people closest to those men to be also the harbingers of that behavior that you want to see. Men are going to have to be able to check each other and be more open to have that. Society can say, oh, why didn't you do this? Or you're protecting a murderer. And I'm telling you, a lot of men that said that didn't necessarily think they were protecting a murderer. They thought, damn, what happened to my man? Which is, we would always say, what? Wait, hold on. Right? They thought they were doing that. The process of understanding the broader harm to black women that happens in obvious and non-obvious ways is a cultural shift. that has to be a cultural shift. It's not necessarily going to be managed via social media.
Yeah.
It has to be a communal conversation of men understanding why, even if it has nothing to do with you, why black women feel left, they feel vulnerable. Why, yes, it could have been a situation from their families. It could have been a situation that happened in school. And when it happens again, it is just more trauma that reinforces an idea. And there is going to have to be something that people will understand. Yes, there's a whole host of reasons that black men, the first thing they go to is, no, my man ain't do that. Versus your man did it, he's a degenerate. But there's a reason that these men first go, oh no, because there's recency bias around how black men see black men. There's recency bias how black women see black women, and I just think it's a moment that if we're thoughtful, we can have a bigger conversation other than almost like to make an example out of Roland Martin. Because guess what, making an example out of Roland Martin matters, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, some people will stop listening. There's some people who will start listening to him because of what he's experiencing.
Right.
Right. So if we ever try to judge by social media on the like right or wrong world, that becomes a 50-50. So and again, I don't think that Roland Martin doesn't care about women, but
Yeah.
may he not been as intentionally thoughtful because you know the brother. Yes. So how do we start to broaden our idea of community safety and family safety, but really also making sure that we're being very real about saying that we're family? Because my thing goes back to, we throw these terms around, but are we actually being family?
Yeah. Are we
Because
actually
family
being
gonna check on each other, family gonna step to each other, family sets boundaries. You know what I mean? And then for me and for us, just as a adage and part of our system, I just think about the children. Like, I think about, at some point they had to see both of their parents murdered. Obviously, they were closer to their mothers from what I've read, and you know, but they see both of the people that created them murdered
Yeah.
after having a bad, frankly, 4 or 5 years at least, if not more, and they have to continue, right? And so it also, once we put it down for personal consumption and sound bites, there's family, there's children, there's a host of people that will never be the same. So if we're really talking about community, how do we make the shift in our own communities to be able to step to when something is not going the way we think it should go? How do we step to be able to have a real conversation that somebody might have to call the police? Because to your point earlier, if you're not going to do nothing about it, you going to have to get somebody who's going to do something about it. And I don't, everybody, it's almost like the whole idea, you see people fighting in the street, you go to stop it, next thing you know, they both beating your ass. Right? Like, next thing you know, they both fighting you.
Right.
And
You
you
like,
think to yourself, like, what, you know what I'm
I was
saying?
trying to make peace. I was trying to. It's like, hey
Sometimes you
man.
might have to pick that jack up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yo, it's
Yeah.
happening right now.
And
Because you
it's
can't be you can't center yourself and be a part of the solution all the time, right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, condolences to their family, to their children, to their family, to people that loved her. I'm sure again there are people who had a relationship with this man who just to see his fall, I'm sure it's its own challenge that people are living through, right? And I see it as a potential to really think about how do we function differently, truly, not just how do we score points with each other or shame people, but how do we actually want the next person that's going through it, or the next group of brothers or the next group of sisters that's going through it, to really be able to help each other as community.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And the thing I'll just add on in closing is that like we do have to check on each other. Right. It's been in community and those that you're close to, is check on each other, but then also in the broader community, so things happen, and then there's whispers, right? And like everybody in every community in America, I guarantee that you be swearing and be like, "Oh man, brother, so what happened? Something happened," and sometimes it ain't for you to know all the details, right? For a myriad of reasons, right? But it is still okay to go like, all right, if there's an understanding here that I need to know, i.e., this person needs to be watched, if this person needs, if somebody goes to be with this person, sometimes you got to give them like, hey, like you good, sis? All right, you know, and the understanding the science is like going in. I guess my biggest thing is just I would not want folks, those who subscribe to the idea that somehow the preset notion should be to disbelieve that harm could be occurring outside of you, to go, no, operate from the idea that it is very likely that harm could be happening outside of your view. And then where do we make the functional compassion and care for the well-being of people to try to step in, intercede, or be a part, and extend, extend a hand, extend some space to say, all right, if there's something happening here, how can we make you safe? How can we protect everyone that's involved here? And then especially as it pertains to young people, that kids are experiencing or seeing things, and that then to find a surrounding community that is so concerned with its own sense of grief of the situation that it doesn't look out for them and their well-being is is another area where I get particularly concerned, right? And that we got to look out for the kids and the young people and the things that they're seeing in the world. So I don't know, we saw it, but I just, I just want to, again, this is in the closing, condolences and respects to the family, to the people closest to any of these situations that we discussed. I'm going to share at least a couple of we brought up one of the things, but some of the, there's a GoFundMe for the children, and some other things, and I'm looking to see if there's some other pieces that I can, share for people who like to do something positive and understand that, them babies gonna need something. That babies gonna need people, not just now. They're gonna need people in 20 years. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like it ain't, and whatever we feel about the situation, them babies are gonna feel something totally different. And us need to be prepared to like be centered where we at, to be where, what do them kids need, so they can have some level of healing. And and as far as men in general, hey man, the everybody actually, as it pertains to anything where you engage or thinking you may harm yourself or harm someone else, man, there's I think it's 988 here. Somebody like call somebody for help if you having those thoughts. Just call somebody for help. So with that, I'm gonna say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast. And you can support the podcast by rating, subscribing wherever you listen. You can search Justice Rajee on Patreon and become a subscriber. Please check the links in the show notes. I should have a couple in there where you can donate something to the children, the Fairfax children specifically. And man, we got to do better. We have to keep working, and we have a heavy responsibility to interrupt these realities. And that's all I can say. So respects and love, and hope folks find safe harbor and peace. Thank you for listening. Peace.